The hard truth is, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America. So radical, so all-encompassing that it would transform this country into something utterly unrecognizable.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
Mounted police to clear what has been an entirely peaceful protest.
I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are.
Are you okay?
Dominate the streets.
Masked, camouflaged men with patches bearing the words police, detaining individuals and putting them inside unmarked vans.
This is an attack on our democracy.
Their agenda is based on government control. Our agenda is based on freedom.
When the economy crashes, when the country goes to total hell, and everything is a disaster, you have riots to go back to where we used to be when we were great. When you guys put somebody in the car, please don't be too nice. Maybe you should have been roughed up. Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. Very fine people on both sides.
I can't breathe over there.
Oh, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Get that son of a bitch off the field right now. In the good old days when they protested once, they would not do it again so easily. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Fake, disgusting news.
Time here.
Are you okay? Get shot!
The enemy of the people.
Step back, get back. Yeah, I got hit. Hold on.
President tweeted, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
MAGA, they love black people. What do you have to lose?
And there are forces in America today trying to take us back to another time and to another period. We've come too far and made too much progress to go back. With this piece of legislation, we will continue to go forward.
A civil rights icon, a great hero of American history, and a friend to this show has died. He was 80 years old. Lewis had been battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now, there are a few American leaders who embody the pursuit for justice quite like John Lewis. The Democratic congressman from Georgia symbolized for so many the moral compass of this nation. He gained prominence during the Selma to Montgomery marches on Bloody Sunday, where he was brutally beaten. It was a key turning point in the civil rights movement, spurring the passage of the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965. John Lewis was always on the front lines of the fight for justice and equality. As a member of Congress, he was a forceful, prominent voice in the House caucus, known for delivering fiery rebukes against the Trump administration, fighting and imagining a better America, even until his final days, for a nation still grappling with racial violence and a relentless pandemic. This morning, former Vice President Joe Biden released a statement that reads in part, "We are made in the image of God." And then there is John Lewis. How could someone in flesh and blood be so courageous, so full of hope and love in the face of so much hate, violence, and vengeance? Perhaps it was the spirit that found John as a young boy in the Deep South, dreaming of preaching the social gospel. The work ethic his sharecropper parents instilled in him and that stayed with him. The convictions of nonviolent civil disobedience he mastered from Dr. King and countless fearless leaders in the movement, or the abiding connection with the constituents of Georgia's 5th District he loyally served for decades. Or perhaps it was that he was truly a one-of-a-kind, a moral compass who always knew where to point us and which direction to march. So this morning we pay tribute to John Lewis, a source of inspiration who devoted his life to justice, to democracy, and to making good trouble.
Sometimes I hear people saying nothing has changed. But for someone to grow up the way I grew up in the cotton fields of Alabama, to now be serving in the United States Congress, makes me want to tell them, come and walk in my shoes. My name is John Robert Lewis. I saw segregation, I saw racial discrimination, and I wanted to do something about it.
John Lewis came from humble roots as the son of sharecroppers in Pike County, Alabama. As a young man, I think he was chosen by God for leadership.
When I was growing up, I saw the signs that said white men, colored men, white women, colored women. I asked my mother, my father, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents why. They was avoid, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. I got in trouble.
There was something deep down within me, moving me, that I could no longer be satisfied or go along with an evil system.
I remember standing with President Kennedy when I was 23. I met Dr. King when I was 18, Rosa Parks when I was 17. And all these people made me a better person, a stronger person.
He organized freedom rides and sit-ins and voter registration drives.
And he emerged as one of the most courageous and important student leaders of the American civil rights movement.
I was not concerned about making history. I just wanted to change things.
I have a dream.
John was also one of the planners of the Great March on Washington.
Brother John Lewis.
And was the youngest speaker to address the audience on that historic day.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
I have never ever seen a crowd like that before. Never spoken to a crowd like that before.
Wake up, America, wake up!
I was only 23 years old.
One Sunday in 1965, he set out to lead a march from Selma to Montgomery.
John Lewis led them out of the church on a mission to change America.
We came here to protest an unjust system, denying blacks the right to vote. Our country will never, ever be the same because of what happened on this bridge.
We're marching today to dramatize to the nation, dramatize to the world, that hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens of Alabama, but particularly here in the Black Belt area, denied the right to vote.
It's fate and history coming together in a single place.
There are places and moments in America where this nation's destiny has been decided. Selma is such a place.
We were determined, we were organized, we were disciplined, and we were committed to the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence. We were prepared to die for what we believed in.
They stampede us with whips, nightsticks, and horses. They tear gas us. They turn our nonviolent protest into blood.
I lost consciousness. 50 years later, I don't recall how I made it back across that bridge.
Their cause must be our cause too. It's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice, and we shall overcome.
5 months later, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act.
The American people were ready for the Congress and the President to act. We made them ready.
All of the people should have a right to participate in the democratic process. They all should have that elementary right to register and vote.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 has been the lifeblood of the movement.
America and the world need more of what is in John Lewis's heart.
My philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something. Stand up, speak up, speak out.
If not us, then who? If not now, then when? It's a question John Lewis has been asking his entire life. Generations from now, when parents teach their children what is meant by courage, the story of John Lewis will come to mind. An American who knew that change could not wait for some other person or some other time.
It doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. It doesn't matter whether we're straight or gay. We are one people, we are one family, we are one house.
You know, it's so important to remember that history. I mean, there were 4 attempts to pass a Voting Rights Act to allow black Americans to vote, 1866, 1957, 1964. It was John Lewis's beating on that bridge, along with those other brave young people, college students, just above college students, 20-year-olds, who bled on that bridge. John Lewis's blood paid for that 1965 Voting Rights Act. So for those who are praising John Lewis and standing in the way of restoring that act. Think about that for a moment. His blood paid for it. So if you want to honor him, there's a pretty direct way for you to do that rather than
I'm like the super genius of all time.
Donald Trump loves to brag about how smart and mentally fit he is.
President Trump revealing that he took a cognitive test.
I aced the test. Doctors, that's an unbelievable thing. Rarely does anybody do what you just did.
The truth, Don is dumb.
I had a mask on. I sort of liked the way I looked. Looked like the Lone Ranger.
Former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis claims Donald Trump has the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader. Former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called Trump an idiot. And Rex Tillerson?
You still haven't denied that you called him a moron.
As president, he's failed at every subject. His handle on history?
1775. Our army ran the ramparts. It took over the airports.
What about English?
I had the best words. Sock rocket. Stinks or bipartisan solutions. I tested positively toward negative.
His grasp on geography's no better.
We're building a wall in Colorado.
Colorado?
Belgium is a beautiful city.
And when it comes to science, Trump's arrogance and stupidity are now killing us on a mass scale.
Relax. It's going to sort of just disappear. I feel good about it. That's all it is, just a feeling. We're very much going to put pressure on governors to open the schools.
Is the man who has failed at everything, who you want making decisions for your child's future.
So shower heads, you take a shower, the water doesn't come out. You want to wash your hands, the water doesn't come out. So what do? You just stand there longer, or you take a shower longer? Because my hair, I don't know about you, but it has to be perfect. Perfect. Dishwashers, you didn't have any water, so the people that do the dishes, you press it, and it goes again, and you do it again and again. So you might as well give them the water because you'll end up using less water. So we made it so dishwashers now have a lot more water. And in many places, in most places of the country, water is not a problem. They don't know what to do with it. It's called rain. They don't have a problem. And old-fashioned incandescent light bulbs, I brought them back. I brought them back. They have two nice qualities. They're cheaper and they're better. They look better. They make you look so much better. That's important to all of us. But they're better and much cheaper. And they were mandated out, legislated out, and we brought them back, and they're selling like hotcakes.
The President of the United States.
And the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero. Our numbers are lower than just about anybody. I'd love to have it open by Easter. You know it is going away. We've done, I think, on average, really phenomenally. And you had doctors saying that we've done an incredible job. I think what happens is it's going to go away. This is going to go away. This virus is going to disappear. This is going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away, and it's we're not going to see it again, hopefully. We have met the moment. And we have prevailed. It'll go away at some point. It'll go away. Many of these people aren't very sick, but they still go down as a case. We were able to cut it off, stop it, just like this. And it is dying out. The numbers are starting to get very good. And now it's time to open up, get back to work. The coronavirus, that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope. We show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless. We're not closing. We'll never close. We want to stay open, and we will stay open. We're not closing. We have to get our schools open and stop this political nonsense. You're losing a lot of lives by keeping things closed.
Jeez.
So we have many exciting things that we'll be announcing over the next 8 weeks, I would say. Things that nobody has even contemplated, thought about, thought possible, and things that we're going to get done, and we have gotten done. We've started in most cases. We're taking on so many aspects of things, but you'll see levels of detail, and you'll see levels of thought that a lot of people believed very strongly we didn't have in this country. We're going to get things done. We're going to get things done that they've wanted to see done for a long, long time. So I think we'll start sometime on Tuesday.
It'll all get better, starting sometime on Tuesday.
Our entire economy and our very way of life are threatened by Biden's plans to transform our nation and subjugate our communities through the blunt force instrument of federal regulation at a level that you haven't even seen yet. The Democrats in D.C. have been and want to, at a much higher level, abolish our beautiful and successful suburbs by placing far-left Washington bureaucrats in charge of local zoning decisions. Your home will go down in value and crime rates will rapidly rise. Joe Biden and his bosses from the radical left want to significantly multiply what they're doing now. And what will be the end result is you will totally destroy the beautiful suburbs.
Wow. Whoa. Okay, Michael Steele, aside from the fact that he is now only able to speak in places where people are forced to clap for him when he comes out to the stage, which is pathetic. But what the heck was he saying? Is he saying what I think he was saying? Can you please translate?
Well, there's no translation there because it was a nonsensical, rambling musing of whatever's in the mind. I mean, the idea that, you've got people who are going to take down the suburbs, that housing stock is going to implode. Well, that flies in the face of the reports that are coming out this week that shows that in terms of citizens going out and buying homes, that actually is increasing. People, that's beginning to turn to some pre-COVID-19 levels. Interest rates are the lowest they've been since the 1950s. So the reality of it is the president has this dystopian view of the world that he wants to project out politically. And hoping that it will generate within the suburban community where he's quite frankly having some problems, this fear that these Washington bureaucrats under the guise of Joe Biden will come into their neighborhoods and their communities and destroy them. We know this is crazy talk. We know this is a president who's standing on the White House lawn with trucks behind him, shilling like in a TV commercial. But the reality of it is that's not going to undo what has been done on COVID-19, what has been done in dealing with the flattening of the economy, and what's been done in the civil rights space with respect to the death of George Floyd. These three factors are like a weight around his political ankles that he cannot get away from, no matter what backdrop he puts on the White House lawn. People woke up this morning with more deaths, more cases of coronavirus, and no policy to effectively to deal with any of it.
We have to open our schools. It's so important to open our schools.
Kids need to be back in school.
We don't want CDC guidance to be a reason why people don't reopen their schools.
He means open and full, kids being able to attend each and every day at their school. The science should not stand in the way of this. The science should not stand in the way of this. Science should not stand in the way of this.
Tonight on Story Hour,
A brief reading of Mary Trump's new book, Too Much and Never Enough. Brought to you by the Lincoln Project. Let's read from the book. After the election, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Mitch McConnell, all men with more than a passing resemblance to Fred, recognized in ways others should have, but did not, that Donald's checkered personal history and his unique personality flaws make him extremely vulnerable to manipulation by smarter, more powerful men. His pathologies have rendered him so simple-minded, it takes nothing more than repeating to him the things he says to and about himself dozens of times a day. He's the smartest.
I'm like a smart person.
The greatest.
Nobody bigger. I know more or better. I know more.
I know a lot. I have a very good brain.
The best.
Best words.
Better than anybody.
To get him to do whatever they want, whether it's imprisoning children in concentration camps, betraying allies, implementing economy-crushing tax cuts, or degrading every institution that contributed to the United States' rise and the flourishing of liberal democracy. I'm no psychiatrist, Donald, but it sounds like to me you have daddy issues. Join us again for another edition of Story Hour, brought to you by the Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome to another episode of Story Hour, brought to you by the Lincoln Project. Let's read from the book, shall we? Mary, one of 6 daughters, were encouraged to journey to America, where the opportunities were greater and the men were more plentiful. Sounds familiar. In early May 1930, and a classic example of chain migration, Mary boarded the RMS Transylvania, in order to join 2 of her sisters who had already settled in the United States. Despite her status as a domestic servant, as a white Anglo-Saxon, Mary would have been allowed into the country even under her son's draconian new immigration rules, introduced nearly 90 years later. She turned 18 the day before her arrival in New York and met Fred not long after. Fred and Mary were married on a Saturday in January 1936. That was a heartwarming story. Now, Donald, your mother was an immigrant. Shame on you. Won't you join us again for another episode of Story Hour, brought to you by the Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
With 135,000 Americans dead and our economy on the edge of a new Great Depression, Ivanka Trump has some advice.
Find something new.
Oh, of course. Why didn't we think of that? It's so simple. How about jewelry design? Have Daddy loan you a few million to get started. Or fashion. Once you get millions in Chinese patents and trademarks, cha-ching. You can even get a job in the White House. Just ask Daddy. The important thing is to find something new. I mean, who cares if you're about to be evicted, or lose your health care, or can't make ends meet?
Find something new.
Can't feed your kids? Let them eat cake.
Ivanka is right about one thing. This November, we will find something new, and it won't be her daddy.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
know you were critical of Fox yesterday. You came out and you tweeted Fox News heavily promoting the Democrats through the DNC communications director, spewing out whatever she wanted.
Absolutely.
So you were very upset.
No, I'm not happy with Fox.
All right, well, I think the president watches Fox. I also think he is getting sick of Fox, which is weird because I think he gets pretty fair coverage at Fox. But the president making clear to fact check him is to be all but dead to him, and his legion of supporters who let me know in no uncertain terms I am either with him totally or I am a never Trumper fully. There are no grays, no middle ground. You're either all in or you're just out. Loyal on everything or not to be trusted on anything. Which could explain the president himself this week bashing Fox News yet again, urging his supporters to stop watching the channel, to quote tweet, "Fox isn't working for us anymore." Well, first of all, Mr. President, we don't work for you. I don't work for you. My job is to cover you, not fawn over you or rip you. Just report on you, to call balls and strikes on you. My job, Mr. President, our job here is to keep the scores, not settle scores. Now, in my case, to report the economic numbers when they're good and when they're bad, when the markets are soaring and when they're tumbling, when trade talks look like they're coming together and when they look like they're falling apart. It is called being fair and balanced, Mr. President, yet it is fair to say you're not a fan when that balance includes stuff you don't like to hear or facts you don't like to have questioned. You're only human. I get that. Who likes to be corrected? But you are the president. It comes with the job, just like checking what you say and do comes with my job. After all, I'm not the one who said tariffs are a wonderful thing. You are. Just like I'm not the one who said Mexico would pay for the wall. You did. Just like I'm not the one who claimed that Russia didn't meddle in the 2016 election. You did. Now, I'm sorry you don't like these facts being brought up, but they are not fake because I did. What would be fake is if I never did. If I ignored all the times you said you loved your old Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, until you didn't. Had no plans to dump your Homeland Security Secretary until you did. Called Chinese President Xi Jinping an enemy just last week and a great leader this week. Sometimes you don't even wait that long. Last week, you expressed an appetite for background checks before arguing just hours later our background checks are already strong. These aren't fake items. They're real items, and you really said them. Just like you never paid to silence a porn star until it turns out you did. Never ordered your former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Bob Mueller until we learned you tried. Fake is when it's wrong, Mr. President, not when it's unpleasant. Just like it isn't and wasn't fake when you said the Access Hollywood tape wasn't real when it was, or that you inherited a depression from Barack Obama when you didn't, or that you ripped quantitative easing when he was president, but are furious the Federal Reserve isn't doing the same for you now that you're president. You're entitled to your point of view, Mr. President, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. Now, we can argue over whether you ever wanted to buy Greenland or disrupt hurricanes with nuclear weapons, but where seeds are planted, doubts are sown. You're right to say the media isn't fair to you, that they're more inclined to report the bad than anything good about you. So it is no surprise you're frustrated that more aren't in line with you, and that everyone at Fox might not be in lockstep with you. You might even think that those who are work for you. They don't. I don't. Hard as it is to fathom, Mr. President, just because you're the leader of the free world doesn't entitle you to a free pass. Unfortunately, just a free press. Good night.
Mr. President, you want to talk about corruption? I've released 21 years of my tax returns. I entered as one of the poorest men in Congress, left one of the poorest men in government, in Congress, and as vice president. I made no money while I was in there other than my salary. Mr. President, even Richard Nixon released his tax returns. Mr. President, release your tax returns or shut up.